So a few years into my marriage, Kathleen, we were having a hard time. The economy had pretty well collapsed, flattened in Tulsa. And during that time, I was very busy. I got very busy, a lot busier than I wanted. I wasn't making any money. I was scrambling for work. And a toothache came on. I'm not even sure which side of my mouth it was. I'm not even sure if it was an upper or lower, but it came on, and it was intense, and then it faded. And then it came on again so many days or weeks later, and it was intense, and it faded. And one day I was in a church worship service, and it was coming on that much, so much that somebody had asked if I wanted prayer, and a couple of the elders prayed for me. And the toothache went away. And that was great. And about 3 or 4 weeks later, it broke. It broke in my mouth. I was eating a meal, and it broke, and I took this thing out. I go, gee, that's it. So I went over to my dad. My dad's a dentist, so this shouldn't really happen. My dad's a dentist, and he looked at it. He said, okay, come to the office tomorrow. So I went into the office, and my dad looked in there, and he pulled it. Just before he pulled it, he explained what he was going to do, that he was going to leverage it out, and it would come. And so he did that. And then he sat down on his stool, his dental stool, and he looked at me, and he was so apologetic to me that he had missed it, that he had let this happen to me, that he had not seen it or he had not taken care of it before, and that I had lost this tooth. And so what I was able to figure out is that it was what people call a wisdom tooth, something that comes in later on in life. This had come in, and this had begun to emerge, and it rotted. It rotted, and then it broke and came out. So it's the only tooth in my mouth that's rotted, and I go to the dentist twice a year regular, and he always rolls back a stool and says, I'm not making any money on you. He just says that twice a year. I'm not making any money on you. I'm not making. So because what had happened was when I was young, when our family was young, my father was he was a dental practitioner, and he was on a research team, and actually what's in Colgate toothpaste, he was part of that research, and so we had the pure drops of sodium monofluorophosphate, pure drops. We used to suck on it too because it had a salty taste to it, and our teeth were hard. Our teeth are just infused with that, and so he was stupefied. I'm going to say he was stunned and stupefied that this was happening, and he was apologetic. And I say that because after the resurrection of Jesus Christ, there's this road to Emmaus scene where you have a disciple, I think his name was Cleopas, with someone else unnamed, and they're walking the road, and they're also stunned, and they're also stupefied about the events that had just happened at Passover, that what had happened with Jesus Christ. And Jesus Christ had, after listening to him, he lets them know. He says to them, how slow of heart, how slow of mind, how slow of heart to understand that all this, to know and to understand what's been written of me, that it's all in the Scriptures, it's all in the law, and it's in the prophets, and it's in the Psalms, and you don't have to be so stunned about this, and we'll go through it again. And that's how it was for those guys at the resurrection. What's getting ready to happen is something that's laid out for a long time. It happens in Jerusalem, and Jerusalem's a place that's in our Scripture that it shows up what the event that's going to where it happens. It shows up a little bit in what's called 2 Chronicles. So Chronicles is a book that's written after the Babylonian captivity, and it's a historian who's going back, and he's trying to, and I think it's titled The Events of the Day. So it's kind of like an account of the major events of the history of Jerusalem, the history of their history. and he calls it, in the Greek it's called Chronicles. And so if I was to read a little bit out of chapter 2 Chronicles 2, Solomon decided to build a temple for the name of the Lord and a royal palace for himself. I like all that part, because when you're getting ready to do a major construction project, that's what he's getting ready to do. So Solomon conscripted 70,000 laborers and 80,000 stone cutters in the hill country and 3,600 to oversee them. That's a lot of conscripts. In general, people think the numbers are inflated in Chronicles. So if you have some big event going on, you go ahead and bump up the numbers a little bit. So you can read this, and he actually contacts Tyre and Sidon. They're the big traders. They're the Phoenician traders, and they have access to the woods, the cedars of Lebanon, and they have access to all kinds of things. And so that's a good contact. It's not such a good contact because Queen Jezebel comes from that line. So it's one of those things. Well, you got to be careful who you're trading with. But for the building of the temple, that's going to be management, upper management. They're familiar with how these things are done, and they're the suppliers. So I'm going to jump to 3. Solomon began to build the house of the Lord in Jerusalem on Mount Moriah, where the Lord had appeared to his father David at the place that David had designated on the threshing floor of Ornan the Jebusite. And that's really a curious place, because just before Solomon got started, he wanted to count everybody that he was going to be able to put to work, and he wanted to count the finances he was going to have. And he did the same thing that his father David had done. He said, we need to run a census count of everybody. But when David had ordered the census count, it was a terrible thing that happened. There was a lot of people that were killed over that. David's general said, don't do this. Don't run a census count. Because it's always supposed to be trust in the Lord God. Don't trust in your own arm. Don't trust in things that you can manipulate and exploit. Trust in the Lord God. So it was a very bad thing. You can read about that in David. Solomon does the same thing. He runs a count. A census count. He wants to see who's there, because David has conquered everybody. So now we're going to go ahead and pull people out of the hill country. We're going to put them to work for the name of the Lord, and we're going to build a big temple and a palace while we got so many people going. Mount Moriah first shows up in Genesis 22. After these days, God tested Abraham. He said to him, Abraham, he said, here I am. He said, take your son, your only son Isaac, whom you love, and go to the land of Moriah, and offer him there as a burnt offering on one of the mountains that I shall show you. So that mountain ends up being Mount Moriah. That's how it's understood. Now, some people think, well, that the Chronicles writer, he went and backdated that stuff. It's not above people to backdate things, documents. If you want to trace your lineage or trace the history of land or something, sometimes it's a technique to just backdate things and to show that you were here first or before. And so people wonder about the historian who does Chronicles, that maybe he just backdated that thing about that same mount where Solomon built is the same mount that Abraham had taken Isaac. So we cannot clarify any of that stuff. And in the way that the Lord works and the way that the scriptures work, it doesn't matter, because you really are taken out of time in a lot of ways of what's going on. But it ends up being this place that we call Jerusalem, and it ends up being a place of this rock, and it ends up being a sacrifice. And a sacrifice is a strange thing. And people then and people now are still dumbfounded about the whole thing. We're still stunned and we're still stupefied. Actually, in Isaiah 53, he'll even say, kings will shut their mouths. There's a lot. It's hard to shut up a king's mouth sometimes. Kings will shut their mouth. what that has not been told them, they shall see. And what they have not heard, they shall contemplate. This is a big movement that's going on. Dumbfounded and stupefied that I should have caught that, but I didn't catch that. This is the history of Israel. This is the history of the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom. You can read a lot about it in what's called First Isaiah. First Isaiah he says a lot of prophetic words about all the different peoples who live in the neighborhood. And everything is going to be very hard and very bad. But I want to read to you one just from Isaiah 29. I think that's going to wrap it up. Isaiah 29. Ariel, the city where David encamped. Add year to year, let the festivals run their round, yet I will distress Ariel, and there shall be moaning and lamentation, and Jerusalem shall be to me like an Ariel. An Ariel is an altar hearth. So you would never want the God of your city to say your city is going to become an altar hearth. That's a very bad thing. Actually, what it ends up being, what's called the Holocaust, is a whole burnt offering. It's an altar hearth. It's something that's very bad, that I'm stunned and I'm stupefied. And how could this ever happen? Because our God, our history of our God, is the God of all creation. Everything's under His control. But the word of the Lord, the law and the Psalms and the prophets and the history lets us know over and over that the Lord's ways and our ways not a match. They do not match anywhere. That the Lord is doing a marvelous work, a work that people will not believe it when it's witnessed, a work that is a fearsome work. And that's what's getting ready to happen here at what we call the Passover event. Jesus Christ will not deny that His calling. Jesus Christ will not deny that people need to know and understand that the work of a God is a work that they are not familiar with and that they'll never be familiar with, that they're just going to have to be witnesses of it. And once this thing gets rolling here, this Passover year, there's no stopping it. It's the work that belongs to a God. It's not the work of a mortal. But all of it is for us. It's all put there and placed there. That's what the word covenant is. It's a tithe. It's a diatheke. It's a tithime. It's something that's placed, put in place for all people, if we will receive it. In Jesus' name. Amen.